Chapter 1. Where only the strong survive. The brutal mathematics of predator and prey. Most animals born today will be dead within a week. Nature doesn't care about your feelings. Picture this. A newborn wildebeest calf takes its first trembling steps on the golden plains of the Serengeti. Within 60 seconds it must be able to run, not walk. Run. Because somewhere in the tall grass, something is already watching. This is not a fairy tale. This is not a nature documentary with a happy ending stitched on for comfort. This is the raw, unfiltered reality of life in the wild. A reality so brutal that most of us have been shielded from it. The Serengeti has witnessed over 1 million wildebeest deaths every single year for the past 10,000 years. The mathematics of death never change. Welcome to the harsh reality of life in the wild. I am your guide into the face of nature's fundamental law: survive or become fuel. The numbers that will shock you. Only 1 in 10 lion cubs born in the wild survives to adulthood. The other 9 die from starvation, rival males, disease, or simply being abandoned. Let that sink in for a moment. 1 in 10. If you applied those odds to a human classroom of 30 children, only 3 would reach their teenage years. We would call that a catastrophe. In the wild, they call it Tuesday. The African wild dog, arguably the most efficient predator on Earth, spends 75% of its life starving. Adults run themselves to skeletal limits, chasing prey across 30 kilometers of scorching savanna, only to watch a hyena steal the meal in seconds. In the oceans, the statistics become even more staggering. A single Atlantic cod female releases up to 9 million eggs per spawning season. Of those 9 million potential lives, statistically fewer than 2 will survive long enough to reproduce themselves. 2 from 9 million. Every creature today is the product of an unbroken chain of survivors, stretching back 3.8 billion years. You are built from survivors. The predator's burden, a life of near constant failure. A cheetah is the fastest land animal alive, and it still fails 50% of its hunts. Its spine flexes like a spring. Its enlarged heart pushes oxygen-rich blood to muscles that can propel it to 70 miles per hour. And yet, a cheetah fails to catch its prey approximately 50% of the time. Even in success, it must rest for 30 minutes before eating. During those 30 minutes, lions and hyenas frequently steal the kill. A mother cheetah with cubs loses up to 50% of all kills. Living as prey. The art of surviving every single day. A zebra never fully sleeps. Its brain remains partially alert even during rest. Imagine living your entire life knowing that something bigger than you wants to eat you. Every single moment of every single day. Zebras have evolved split-second pattern recognition that can identify the silhouette of a lion at 300 meters in complete darkness. Their stripes are now understood to serve a different purpose: confusing biting insects like tsetse flies, which carry deadly diseases. The thing most likely to kill you in the African wild isn't a lion, it's a fly smaller than your thumbnail. The Great Migration, death on an industrial scale. Every year, 1.5 million wildebeest undertake the largest land migration on Earth. During river crossings, crocodiles consume an estimated 1,000 wildebeest every single day. It is a massacre. The Mara River crossing is the most dangerous stretch. Wildebeest gather in their thousands, sensing danger, their instincts screaming to stop. They jump. And below, Nile crocodiles, weighing 500 pounds, have been waiting for this exact moment for weeks. The water turns red. Animals are dragged under. Others are crushed in the panic, drowned by the weight of their own kind. Scientists estimate 10,000 wildebeest drown every year, not killed by predators, but by the pressure of their own stampeding herd. The predator within the prey, when the hunted fights back. A hippopotamus kills more humans than lions and leopards combined. Cape buffalo are prey animals, and yet they are responsible for more lion deaths than almost any other species. There are documented cases of buffalo herds pursuing and killing individual lions, not in self-defense, but as retribution. Elephants, technically herbivores, are responsible for approximately 500 human deaths per year worldwide. What this tells us about life: the wild is not evil. The predator is not cruel. These are impossibly beautiful systems. Darwin described survival of those best adapted to change. The wild proves this every single day. In Chapter 2, we go deeper into the social structures that make survival possible, because in the wild, loneliness is a death sentence. Chapter 2. The Politics of Survival. Power, Betrayal, and Loyalty in the Wild. In the wild, democracy doesn't exist. But neither does true dictatorship. What animals have developed is something far more sophisticated and far more brutal than either. There is a lioness in Kenya's Masai Mara who has ruled her pride for 7 years. She is not the largest. She is not the fastest. She has survived drought, the deaths of her cubs, and rival invasions. She leads through something we are only beginning to understand: social intelligence. The ability to read, manipulate, and maintain complex relationships across a group. In other words, politics. Welcome to Chapter 2, where we discover that the wild is not just a battlefield. It is a boardroom, a courtroom, a social network. The lion pride. Democracy in the grass. When male lions take over a pride, their first act is to kill every cub sired previously. This isn't cruelty. This is calculated genetic strategy. A lion pride is not a dictatorship of the strongest male. In reality, lion prides are female-led cooperative societies. The lionesses hunt. The lionesses defend territory. They raise cubs communally. Biologists call this alloparenting. The adult males serve functions too. They defend territory and carry successful genes. Females choose which males to allow in based partially on raw quality. They are actively selecting for genes, not just accepting strength. When a new male coalition replaces the resident males, they commit sexually selected infanticide. It is genetically rational. The wild does math. The females are not passive victims. They have evolved alongside it. Their bodies adapt to maximize reproductive success under these harsh conditions. The wolf pack, when cooperation is everything. A lone wolf is not a romantic ideal. It is a death sentence. In Yellowstone, the reintroduction of wolves in 1995 changed everything. It transformed the rivers and the very landscape itself. This is a trophic cascade. By hunting elk, wolves changed where elk grazed. Trees grew back, and riverbanks stabilized. Wolf packs are family units. The alpha wolves are simply the parents. Leadership is earned through knowledge and social cohesion. Wolves use over 30 distinct facial expressions to communicate. They grieve. They feel. Their political structure determines survival. Chimpanzee politics, the template for everything. We inherited our political brains. It's 6 million years old. Chimps form alliances, betray allies, and use strategic deception. The alpha maintains his position through grooming and sharing food. When an alpha falls, the realignment is breathtaking. Former allies become enemies. The capacity for organized violence is an inherited trait. The elephant matriarchy. Elephant herds are led by the oldest female. She is the living memory of the herd. She knows where the water is during a drought. She remembers the poachers. Her wisdom is the difference between survival and death. Elephants mourn their dead. They return to the bones of deceased members years later, standing in silence. Meerkats, the tyranny of the queen. A meerkat queen suppresses the reproduction of others through hormonal stress. Prison is better than certain death. Subordinates stay because the alternative has a near 100% mortality rate. This is the bargain of social life. You give up autonomy for protection, and the slim chance the hierarchy will shift. The office politics you navigate are biological programs running on hardware older than our species. Understanding them is honest. In Chapter 3, we go deeper into deception and camouflage, because in the wild, lying is not just acceptable, it is essential. Chapter 3. The Art of Deception, Lies, Mimicry, and Manipulation in the Natural World. The most successful survival strategy in the history of life on Earth is not strength, it is not speed, it is not even intelligence. It is deception. Nature is the greatest liar that ever existed. There is a flower in Southeast Asia that has never produced a single drop of nectar, not once in its evolutionary history. It has instead spent millions of years perfecting a lie. The mirror orchid, Ophrys speculum, looks, smells, and feels to an unsuspecting male bee exactly like a female bee in heat. The bee lands on it, attempts to mate with it, and in its confusion transfers pollen from one flower to another. The flower gets pollinated, the bee gets nothing, and the lie continues, generation after generation. This is Chapter 3, where we discover that the wild is not just violent, it is fundamentally dishonest. Camouflage, the first and greatest lie. The leaf-tailed gecko of Madagascar is so perfectly camouflaged that it was not scientifically described until 1888. Camouflage is the most ancient form of deception on Earth. If you cannot be seen, you cannot be eaten. Consider the cuttlefish. It can change both the color and texture of its skin across its entire body in 200 milliseconds. Cuttlefish produce moving patterns on their skin, waves of color that hypnotize prey. They can even display one pattern on one side to deceive a rival male while displaying female coloration on the other. The cuttlefish invented the double bluff millions of years before humans. Even more extraordinary is the mimic octopus. This species can impersonate at least 15 different marine species. Mimicry, wearing another creature's danger as your own. The hoverfly looks exactly like a wasp. It is a harmless nectar feeder living behind the borrowed danger of a reputation. The scarlet king snake is non-venomous. The eastern coral snake is identically patterned and carries one of the most potent toxins. The liar depends on the genuine article for its lie to function. Deceptive signals. Lying with your voice. Fork-tailed drongos in Africa have learned to imitate the alarm calls of meerkats. When a meerkat group finds food, the drongo calls a fake alarm, the meerkats scatter and the drongo steals the meal. The drongo doesn't just lie. It tells enough truth to make its lies believable. This is a communications strategy. Parasitic deception. The cuckoo's crime. The female cuckoo removes one of the host's eggs and lays one of her own in its place in under 10 seconds. When the cuckoo chick hatches, it systematically pushes every other egg and hatchling out of the nest. A reed warbler will exhaust itself feeding a cuckoo chick 20 times its own size. Self-deception in the wild, the most dangerous lie of all. The peacock's tail is enormous and metabolically expensive. By survival logic, it should not exist. Yet he is saying, I am so fit that I can afford to be handicapped. Deception is not a failure of character in the natural world. It is one of the most powerful survival strategies. In Chapter 4, we turn to the world of reproduction and mate selection. Chapter 4. The mating game. Desire, competition, and the violence of reproduction. Male elephant seals fight for the right to mate, and 90% of all males will never successfully reproduce in their lifetime. 9 out of 10 males are genetic dead ends. The mathematics of reproduction is the most brutal math in the wild. On the beaches of Año Nuevo every winter, the ground trembles, not from seismic activity, from the impact of 2 male northern elephant seals, throwing their massive bodies against each other with a force that can be heard from a quarter-mile away. These battles can last for hours. Injuries are severe, deep lacerations to the neck and chest, occasionally broken bones, occasionally death. The winner earns the right to mate with the harem of up to 50 females gathered on that stretch of beach. The loser earns nothing. Welcome to Chapter 4, the arena where the brutality of the wild reaches its most intimate and most extreme expression. The mating game. Sexual selection. The second evolutionary engine. Charles Darwin was so disturbed by the peacock's tail that he wrote, "The sight of a feather in a peacock's tail makes me sick." He knew it contradicted everything his theory predicted, and that the explanation, when he found it, would change everything. Natural selection selects for survival, but there is a second evolutionary engine that can work in direct opposition to survival: sexual selection. Sexual selection operates through 2 mechanisms: male-male competition and female mate choice. Both can drive the evolution of features that are, from a pure survival standpoint, liabilities. The peacock's tail makes him slower and more visible to predators. The elk's antlers make moving through dense forest nearly impossible. These traits exist not despite being costly, but in part because they are costly. They are honest signals of genetic quality. Only a truly superior specimen can bear these handicaps and still survive long enough to display them. Real fact: elk antlers represent the fastest growing tissue of any mammal on Earth, growing up to an inch per day. The animal grows, carries, and then discards 40 pounds of bone every single year as a mating advertisement. Female choice, the real evolutionary driver. In most species, females exercise remarkably sophisticated mate choice. Males perform, females judge. The female's preference shapes the male's evolution more powerfully than any predator. Female satin bowerbirds of Australia do not choose their mates based on physical appearance. They choose them based on architectural talent. Male satin bowerbirds build elaborate structures, bowers, decorated with hundreds of blue objects. The male arranges these objects according to an aesthetic sense of proportion, gradient, and color saturation. Females visit multiple bowers, inspecting each one with genuine critical evaluation. A bowerbird does not build to survive, he builds to be judged. And the females, exercising preference accumulated over millions of years, have selected for something recognizable as aesthetic taste. Art did not begin with humans, it began with survival pressure, infanticide, and the dark economics of parenthood. Reproduction is not just about mating, it is about investment. A female mammal has a hard limit on how many offspring she can raise in a lifetime. Every resource she invests in offspring that won't survive is resources taken from offspring that will. Female bears in poor body condition will abandon or kill their own cubs in bad resource years. The decision is, in biological terms, a factory owner's. The tournament and the pair bond, two very different strategies. Tournament species, elephant seals, red deer, gorillas, are characterized by extreme male-male competition. The reproductive payoff for winning males is enormous. The cost to losing males is total. Pair bonding species, gibbons, most birds, are characterized by both parents investing heavily in offspring. A blue tit will copulate with males other than its social partner up to 40% of the time. Genetic monogamy and social monogamy are completely different things. Extreme reproductive strategies, when nature goes to extremes. The anglerfish female is 10 times the size of the male. When a male finds a female, he bites into her skin. He fuses his blood vessels with hers and slowly dissolves, until nothing remains but 2 sets of gonads attached to her side. He is literally consumed by love. Deep sea anglerfish, males no longer require their own hearts, digestive systems, or brains. The sex-changing fish, when gender is a flexible strategy. When the dominant male in a rasa fish group dies, the dominant female changes sex within days. Gender in biology is a strategy, not a fixed state. In 500 species of fish, individuals can change sex at least once. The lesson of the mating game. The unit of selection in evolution is the gene, not the organism. You are not the point. Your genome is. Every impulse you have ever felt toward another person has a biological history that predates humanity by millions of years. You are not confused. You are ancient. In our final chapter, we look at the force that may ultimately decide which species continue and which do not. Extinction. Chapter 5. The Edge of Extinction, when nature's balance finally breaks. In the last 50 years, humanity has overseen the loss of 70% of all wild animal populations on Earth. Not 70% of species, 70% of individual animals. The wild is not just changing, it is collapsing. And the clock is not ticking. It has already alarmed. There is a place in Australia called the Bramble Cay melomys habitat. The Bramble Cay melomys was a small rodent, brown and unremarkable, living on a tiny coral sand island in the Torres Strait. In 2016, it was officially declared extinct. It was the first mammal confirmed to have been driven extinct by human-caused climate change. Rising seas inundated its island habitat, saltwater killed the vegetation it depended on, and the last known individual disappeared. Welcome to Chapter 5, the chapter that asks the hardest question of all. What happens when the pressures overwhelm the capacity to adapt? The sixth mass extinction. What the data actually says. The current rate of species extinction is 1,000 times the natural background rate. The previous 5 were caused by asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, and ice ages. This one is caused by one species. The 2022 Living Planet report documented an average 69% decline in monitored wildlife populations between 1970 and 2018. Latin America and the Caribbean showed the highest losses, an average 94% decline. This is not a trend, it is a collapse. The cascading consequences. Insects pollinate 1/3 of all human food crops. In Europe, populations have declined by up to 75%. If the pollinators go, the food goes. Biodiversity is not an aesthetic value. It is a functional infrastructure. Bees, butterflies, and other pollinators pollinate crops worth an estimated $500 billion annually to the global economy. Wetlands filter water. Forests stabilize climate. Coral reefs protect coastlines and provide habitat for 25% of all ocean fish species. Keystone species. Some species are disproportionately important, their presence or absence reshaping the entire system. When wolves were removed from Yellowstone, elk populations boomed and overgrazed valley floors. Rivers eroded. Fish populations crashed. The reintroduction of 31 wolves in 1995 reversed this cascade. 31 wolves transformed the rivers of Yellowstone. African elephants are perhaps the most impactful keystone species. They dig water holes that become the only water source for hundreds of species. Remove the elephant, and you don't just lose an elephant, you lose the ecosystem engineer that built the habitat for everything else. The recovery. Stories of hope. The humpback whale population in the North Atlantic has grown from 800 in the 1960s to over 15,000 today. The bald eagle, listed as endangered in 1967, now numbers 316,000 breeding pairs. Recovery is possible. The data proves it. Rewilding. Letting nature do what nature does. It removes the human hand, protects the space, and then stands back. In the Napa state, a farm was converted to rewilding. Within a decade, species absent for generations began returning of their own accord. The wild is not a place apart from human civilization. It is the substrate on which human civilization was built. We are the first species to understand what we are doing to the systems that sustain us. We can choose differently. The question is not whether the wild will survive. It has survived 5 previous catastrophes. The question is whether we will be part of what comes next.